Hey designers, if you've been dying to try out Figma but you're not sure where to start, then you are in for a treat. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through step-by-step how to design this website, giving you all of the basic tools you'll need in order to feel comfortable and confident in Figma. Before we actually dive in, make sure you grab the starter file linked in the description so that you can design along with me. All right, let's get started. If you have downloaded and opened up your starter file, you will see a screen similar to the one I have open right now. Now, before I dive in everything here in the middle, I did want to walk you through kind of where you can find different tools and how Figma is just organized in general. So over here on the left-hand side, you will find your pages and layers. Now, if you've used any sort of Adobe platform in the past or any program in general that organizes things into pages and layers, then you are going to feel right at home because this is exactly how Figma organizes things over here on the left-hand side. Now, for simplicity's sake, we will only be using one page for this project, but the more familiar you get with Figma and the more projects you do on it, you can definitely utilize additional pages. Now, there's a couple of instances that you might do this. For example, if you have a really long-term project that has a lot of different phases, you may consider doing each phase within its own individual page. That way, that phase is super organized. And then another instance that would be really good too is you could have one page simply for all of the resources and then break out the actual website design, including internal pages, mobile design, anything like that in its own separate page. That way, just the designs are in one and all of the resources are in one. Then below, you will find all of the different layers. Now, one thing that I'm going to help you with during this tutorial is definitely naming and grouping objects together. There is nothing worse than when you work with another designer, developer, or whoever on a project and they send you a file, you open it up and it's like the wild, wild west. It's so crazy, disorganized. Nothing's, grouped together, named anything. So it definitely will slow down a project. So I think for your first website within Figma, it would be best practice to get into the habit of naming these layers and grouping like things together. That way you have less layers and it's easier to locate things. Down here in the bottom will be some frequently used tools, to be honest. So some of them are the frame tool, which we will use a ton throughout this design. You have all of the different shapes within this drop down right here. You can use the pen tool and pencil tool, the text tool, and a really cool feature is this comment feature. If you end up collaborating with other people in the future, you can go ahead and leave comments straight within. Now, there are a lot of really cool shortcuts within Figma. We will cover a couple of basic shortcuts in this video to get you comfortable with using them, but I encourage you, just as you practice, to also practice some more advanced shortcuts. But we'll talk a little bit more about shortcuts in a minute. Over here on the right-hand side, as we are using different elements, let's say we're playing with the colors, we're playing with different fonts, images, things like that, all of the settings for that particular element will pop up over here on the right-hand side. Again, we'll dive more into detail on this as we are diving into these different resources. So without further ado, let's dive in right here. Let's work our way over from left to right. So on the left-hand side, I have included a full page screenshot of what the final design will look like. That way, let's say that you're working on this outside of this video, you can come over here and reference this image to make sure that your design is turning out the way that we had envisioned for this project. So treat it as like a little cheat sheet while you are designing. Over here in the middle column, you will find all of the different images, graphics, icons, things like that that we will be using for the design. The nice thing is as well is we have organized these files from top to bottom within the design. So as you can tell, the dog and the little background shape that is behind him are at the very, very top of the website because it is used within the hero section. And then some of these little icons that is used within this section is next. And so as you can tell, as we're working down sections, you can find the images and graphics for it slowly working down the page to help keep you organized. And we're just trying to make this a really smooth, fast process for you. So definitely just work your way down this as we are going through the entire website page. Now, over here on the right-hand side, we have a lot of really cool things. First and foremost, I have included a little cheat sheet right here. I thought that this would be helpful, seeing as how this is your first time dabbling in Figma. I wanted to include some of the basic Figma shortcuts. Now, Figma has a ton of different shortcuts that you can use, and it can feel very, very overwhelming. So to break it down and make it simple with you so that you can just practice with some of the basic ones, I have included some of my most commonly used ones and some of the ones that we will be using the most throughout this design. So in a minute, I'm going to have you drag this over onto the right-hand side of the page once we create a frame. That way, if you need a little shortcut, you can just reference it to the right-hand side, and then all of the resources will be on the left-hand side. Scroll down and you will find the logo. I tried to keep it the size that we'll be using it within the design to make it easiest for you to just drag and drop within the frame. So it does look a little bit small when you are scrolled out like this. Below that, you will find all of the colors that we will be using within this website design. Now we will be creating styles for these colors to make it easier for you to select them during the design process. So that'll come up here shortly. And then right below that, we have all of the fonts we will be using within the website in the correct font sizes. Similar to colors, we are also going to create styles for this, so it's easy for you to change fonts throughout the process. Below that, you will find all of the copy from the top to the bottom. So again, same thing with images and with the text. You basically will work your way from the top down to the bottom, and it will just work seamlessly as we are going along. So first up, before we set our colors and fonts, let's go ahead and create the frame that we will be designing the website on. Now, you can locate the frame a couple of different places. You can come down here and select the frame right here. Now, anytime you hover over these different features, it should within a couple of seconds pop up telling you what it is. So you can click here to create a frame, or you can also use the shortcut F to then pop up the frame. So I'm going to go ahead and click F. And as you can tell, as soon as I clicked that, all of our different settings popped up for all of the potential sizes for this frame. So you could create in the phone, like any phone size, any tablet size, desktop size, like there's a size for everything. Now, we will be using one of these presets, but I do want to note that you can also just drag and drop to whatever size you want. And you can tell in this little blue box below the frame that it will list the size. So that makes it a little bit easy if you're just wanting to drag and drop to a specific size as well. So we are actually going to use one of the frame sizes that it lists. So select F, and we will be using desktop for this particular tutorial. Before we do anything to this frame, let's go ahead and drag our shortcuts over here on the right-hand side. That way, if you need to look at these shortcuts, they will be easier to just slide over and view. Now, when it comes to this frame, the width matters a little bit more than the length because we will be adjusting the length to fit the content. So I'm going to go ahead, and what I like to personally do is some people will drag this down as they're designing the site, but I kind of prefer just from the beginning dragging it really long so we can kind of like match it to what this little screenshot is for now. And then that way, just once we're done with the design, we can drag it up to meet the bottom of the website. I think that's just a little bit easier, but to each their own. You can definitely do whatever feels the best for you. Let's go ahead and create styles for our colors. So go ahead and zoom in to our colors, and you'll want to zoom in enough to where you can see them really, really easy. So we do have two really light layers right here. We will be using this lightish cream color the most, but there will be one spot where we are incorporating some paw prints that we will be using this slightly darker cream color. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you create a style for it just to make it easier to select that color. Then we have 3 different blue colors. We have a little bit of like a greenish yellow color, and then this darker charcoal we will be using for a lot of the fonts within our website. So let's start left to right. Click on the first color and you will want to come over here under fill to this little spot that has 4 circles. And if you hover over it, it says apply styles and variables. So click on this and we will be clicking this little new style button. It looks like a plus in the top right-hand corner. Click on that and it will let you name this color. So you can name it whatever your heart desires. If you want to name it the color code, you're more than welcome. But I like to pick a name for the color. So let's go ahead and name this cream. Now, I will say I am not super creative when it comes to naming these colors. So feel free to be a lot more creative than me when it comes to naming these. So we will click Create Style. And as you can tell, it has created a new color style for us, which will make it super easy to click on these styles later in the design. So now we're basically going to rinse and repeat for each of these different colors. So let's click in, add this style. I'm going to name it darker cream because I am so unoriginal. Next one right here. Light blue. So basic. Let's mix this one up. Call it royal blue. Crazy, I know. This one, we are going to name dark blue. Who would have seen that coming? Let's go ahead and call this like a greenish yellow, because I really feel like it's like a mix between both. I'd be curious to know what color people see, because I feel like these kind of greenish yellows, people tend to see more yellow or more green. And then this one right here, dark gray. Okay. Now, as you can tell, we have all of our color styles listed here on the right-hand side. So whenever we need to access these colors, we can easily click into all of these colors. This will save you so much time. And this prep work might seem a little bit tedious, but it really is a time saver when you go to build out websites with multiple pages. So I just highly recommend taking the extra couple of minutes to do these steps. Now we are going to do the exact same thing, but for our typography. So we're going to do 4 different styles for this particular design. The steps will look very, very similar to the colors, but obviously with under the typography. So go ahead and click into our H1 heading right here. You're going to look for this typography section here on the right-hand side. Look for those 4 buttons similar to the colors. And if you need to hover over it, it should say apply styles. Click on that and you will look for the plus, aka create a style in the top right-hand corner as well. Once it pops up, you will then label it. I just recommend labeling it what I have the fonts over here, so H1 heading, but feel free to be wild and name it whatever you would like. We're going to do the next one, H2 headings, subheadings, paragraph font. And then lastly, we will be creating a couple buttons without a background. So I feel like it's helpful to just go ahead and create a separate style for these buttons because it's essentially the paragraph text but bolded. So why the heck not? Let's go ahead and create one for buttons. Okay. Now, as you can tell, we have all of our different styles here on the right-hand side. We have all of the colors, all of the text, super organized. This will definitely help us throughout the process. Now that we've done an overview of all of our resources and how to use them, let's go straight into the design. Okay, another thing that I think will be helpful to go ahead and take care of is to create 3 different buttons over here on the left-hand side that we can duplicate and use throughout the design. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can create buttons. I'm going to show you a basic way that might feel the most comfortable to you if you are brand spanking new to Figma. But I will also show you another basic way through auto layout. And this will kind of be the intro into auto layout that we do in this video. I do recommend, if you want to use more advanced features in auto layout, we have a lot of really great video tutorials that you can check out. There will only be like a couple instances in this video where we chat about auto layout and kind of dabble a little bit and get a sneak peek of what auto layout is and what you can potentially use it for. So really quick, let me show you the two different ways that I just talked about for creating a button within Figma. So depending on what platforms you have used in the past, I would think that this first option would be the most common way somebody would go to build a button within Figma. And this is the way that I definitely started with when I was creating in Figma. This way is also really nice if you are planning on using Figma for just creating client websites super fast so that you can send them over the design, get their feedback on it to make sure they're liking the direction it's heading, and then basically going to another platform to develop it. I find that this is just a really quick and efficient way to do it, and you're not necessarily worried about the whole develop responsive side of things. So this way will be by using a rectangle. You can either click this button right here or simply click R, and then you can drag out a little rectangle that we will be using for the background of our button. Now, if you come over to our design, you will find that a majority of our buttons are this green color. So let's go ahead and just start with the green color to begin. So over here, we are going to fill this rectangle with a color. Then we would be putting text on top of it. So let's just type out button. We are going to make sure it's center aligned. One cool thing about Figma is if you ever want this text box to go in, you can double click on the sides of the text box and it will automatically snap to the text box, which I think is really cool. But essentially you then place the text on top of the button and hopefully group the button together at least. I'll show you a little auto layout option in a second, but then group the button together. So this is my guess, the way that I would assume a lot of you would create a button. And again, it's totally completely fine if you are beginning on this platform and just want to poke around and lay this website out really quickly, or if you're not worried about the responsive side just on the Figma side of things. Now, I wanted to walk you through an additional way that you can do this, and this is using a feature called auto layout on Figma. And auto layout, essentially, the best way that I like to explain it is where it takes whatever object. So for instance, we're going to be taking text. So let me go ahead and type out the word button and puts a nice little wrapper around it. So let's say that you took I'm going to use a metaphor here, took a package to UPS and you needed to find a box that would tightly wrap it so that it's not rattling around and breaks the object. That's essentially what auto layout does, is it just finds the perfect size package, if you will, and wraps it around that object. Now, in this instance, it's only wrapping around this one text layer, but you can use auto layout for multiple text objects or frames or shapes. Like, you can use it for all sorts of different things. It doesn't just have to be one item. You can also use auto layout on auto layout and on auto layout, similar to how you can group things together. So we could technically group these buttons together, then add some text to the side of it, group the button with the text, and then just like keep grouping things on grouping things. Same case for auto layout, is you can do an auto layout, add some more items, auto layout the next thing and the next thing. But to use auto layout, I like to use a shortcut. I just find it to be a little bit faster, but it is Shift A, and just watch, because instead of this text box just being here, you will see that it wraps it in a cute little box. So here we go. As you can tell, it is now wrapped evenly in a box. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill this new box that we have added behind it. Now, to kind of explain the difference, because you're like probably thinking, Chantel, Why the heck would I do that? That seems a little complicated. And that's what I thought at first as well. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stick with my rectangle and my text because that feels comfortable. But I will say, if you plan on using Figma to its full capabilities and you plan on making your design responsive within Figma, it will make it a lot easier to do elements like this in auto layout. So a great example that I find for this is, let's say that we pop this button into your layout and we're like, oh no, we actually need to make this button a lot smaller or a lot larger. When we go to decrease the size of it, your text is not going to be as intuitive. It's not going to automatically adjust with it. Same thing goes if we were to start typing more text into this box as well. It's not going to automatically adjust the spacing for it. So let's add way more text to this box. So as you can tell, it's just not automatically adjusting the size of the box for me. So then I would basically manually have to come in, click to pull this out while holding Alt. That's how I'm able to do it, versus one side to do it equally on both. And then I would just have to make sure that I have it, opened up. I would then probably have to come in here, click on the positioning, and it's like just a whole process. Whereas if I was to come in here, let's add way more text to this box, you can tell that it's automatically adjusting the space that I need for this box and keeping the spacing that I have. So for this button, I actually have it set to have 10, I think it's pixels, but basically 10 up top, 10 on the left, 10 on the bottom, and 10 on the right-hand side. You can see all of these settings right here. I also have it set to the middle. You can also align the text to different sides if you want it to stay on the left-hand side, which is pretty cool. So you can kind of align it to any side, most likely. And for this video, you're going to have it line up in the center. But let's just dabble with auto layout just for the buttons alone on this website, so you can kind of get a taste of what auto layout will be. But I wanted to show you that you can totally do a rectangle with text if you would like. So you could basically take this, copy and paste it down, and then keep going. So let's go ahead and create 3 buttons. So button primary. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and rename. So we already have the text named, but we're going to go ahead and name this frame because we did put it in an auto layout. And so that automatically puts it within a frame. So let's come over here and rename this layout to button primary. And then we can copy and paste this. So you can also copy and paste a bunch of different ways. You can Command C to copy, Command V to paste. You can also Command D to just duplicate and drag. There's also another shortcut where you can hold down another button. I personally haven't used this shortcut, but I know it's something like Control or Alt. Let me see if I can do, no, it's not Control, but you can basically hold down something to also drag it. So there's a lot of different ways that you can copy, but I think that the way that translates the best from other platforms like Adobe's or some of these different website platforms is just to copy and paste it. So let's try copy and paste. You can also do the duplicate as well. So let's Command C, Command V, and I want to go ahead and move this button down below so that we just keep things pretty and tidy. Now, not only do I like to name all of my different layers, but I also like to order them in the correct order. So as you can tell, when we copied it, it automatically just put the newest layer up top. That's pretty typical when you're working with a program like this, but I'm going to go ahead and just drag it down or drag this layer above that one. That way it's also in the order that I have it. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer button secondary, if I can spell. And then I'm also going to type in secondary right here. So if we go back to our design right here, you will find that we will also be using a blue button within this design. So I'm going to use that one as our secondary button. So let's scroll up. Let's select our button, scroll down to our selection colors. Let's go actually to our styles, click royal blue. And then I also want to change the text to cream. So now we have our first primary button that we can easily copy into our design, our secondary button, and then I'm going to just go ahead and style out just our additional buttons that we have throughout the design. So we have a couple of buttons within this how we can help section, and we also have a couple within our blog right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just style those ones so that they're ready to go. So let's do, I'm going to just call it button transparent. If you were to turn these into something called, and I'm going to point to it on the desktop, a component, this transparent wording wouldn't work. You would have to call it something else. And I would recommend the deeper you get into Figma, learning about components, because they can be incredibly powerful, just like auto layout, because we could essentially create a component set here that creates a button that we could take this button anywhere on the layout. And if for any reason, let's say that we took this primary button here and all of a sudden we're like, oh, actually, I don't want this green button. I kind of just want the button that has a transparent background. Since we already have that component created, instead of then deleting the button, going over to the side, copying and pasting the third button we created, you could simply just click on the component and then come over on the right-hand side, and under that component, there will be a drop-down list with these three options, and you can change your button from the primary button to this transparent, more tertiary, like third button option. So that's a really, really cool option to have. It will save you a lot of time, but I do feel like components can be a little bit confusing for just starting out. So we're not going to create a component just for the sake of this video, because I want this to be as simple and easy as humanly possible. But I will say buttons and product cards and things like that are the perfect items to create components for. So definitely look into components in the future as you are building out on Figma. Really quick now, I wanted to go ahead and set up our grids. So with any website design, it is a good rule of thumb to go ahead and set up a grid, because this will help us ensure that all items throughout the design are lined up properly, not only on the left and right hand sides, but throughout the design as well. So we can come over here to our, I'm blanking, our frame. I wanted to call it an artboard because of Adobe. And we are going to go ahead and click on layout grid right here. Now, automatically it will set you to this grid-like structure, but we are going to do more of a column type layout. So you can click over here on the layout grid settings, and we are going to select from this drop down and click onto columns. So it's pretty standard for it to be set as 12 columns across, and that's exactly what we are going to do for this layout. So that is a pretty standard amount. It does let you adjust the coloring and the opacity if you ever need to. So definitely feel free to mess around with that. I always just keep it the standard red because it totally works for me. Now for this particular design, we are going to do a margin of 40 because I want a little bit of space, but not too much on the sides. And then the gutter, which is essentially the spacing in between all of these different columns, we are going to do 30 for this particular design. So once you plug in all those numbers, you can X out and you can tell that now we have our grid set up to start lining up different objects within our design. Now, one thing I will say is at any time you want to hide the grid and see how your design is looking, you can easily do that two different ways. You can come back over here to the layout grid and look for this little eyeball icon and just simply click it to hide it, and it will basically turn into a shut eye. This option is great if you don't know shortcuts, but you can totally use our cute little shortcut cheat sheet, because sometimes if you're not clicked into this desktop layer, it can be a little bit tricky. So you can also use Control G or Command G, depending on what type of computer you're on, to then hide and show the grid layout. So as you can tell, I'm clicking it on my screen, and I use the shortcut a lot because then you're not having to sift through and do it on the right hand side. So you'll definitely find that tool to be super, super helpful as you're designing. All right, now that we have all of our elements set up for success, let's go ahead to the fun part and dive straight into the design. So I personally, and I find that most designers like to obviously start from the top and work our way down. So let's start with the top hero section. We will build out the menu up here and then add in the hero section text. So for this top section, again, like I was mentioning with the buttons, we can totally use a rectangle if you would like for the background color, because we have this blue background color. But I am going to go ahead and use frames within this video as a nice little intro to frames, because I feel like that's a little bit easier to grasp than some of these other types of features, because frames are a little bit more intuitive and will help you whenever you decide to do a little bit more of responsive design. So you can totally do the same thing with rectangles, but I'm going to go ahead and select a frame and I'm going to drag it across this whole screen. So make sure it lines up with the top right here. And let's go ahead, because you can see we're at 667. Let's go ahead and do 830. Typically, I like to do anywhere from 800 to 1,000. I will do 800 typically when I want people to see text within the next section, and then maybe 1,000 if I need to show more of the image. So 830 will be our nice little sweet spot, because our hero section does take up a good amount of room. And now, since we are using a frame, we will need to fill this frame. This would be the same thing if you were using a rectangle. You would need to fill your rectangle as well. So we're going to come over to fill, click on our styles right here and select this royal blue color. And bam, we have our first frame. So I am going to go ahead and start with our logo right here. So I did change the logo text to be a dark color so that you could see it over here on the resources, but we will want to change it to white. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste it. You are welcome to duplicate it if that's what your heart desires, but copy it and bring it over here onto our frame. Now, this is where our grid will start taking action, because we will want to line up the logo with our grid. We want to make sure that everything on the left-hand side lines up with this outer edge, and everything on the right-hand side lines up with that as well. So, like I had mentioned, we do need to swap out that darker color. So you can do that with our styles down there at the bottom, and the little green paw print should stay the same. Now, a fun little tool that I use really frequently is if you are selected on a particular item, layer, frame, anything like that, you can hold down the Alt key, and when you click up to any other object, frame, or anything, it will tell you the spacing around the particular object that is selected. So as you can tell, this object is 27 away from the top. So I need to select my whole logo layer. And then I am going to move it up 7, because then that should put us at the right spot. So 20. I want my logo to be 20 away from the top, as well as my menu items. Okay, let's go ahead and make sure everything is lined up as well. So one thing I like to do as well is I like to keep my desktop frame as the top layer. That way the resources aren't at the very top, because then when you're going to edit the actual website, you just want all of the elements to be at the top. So definitely just make sure that your desktop frame is the topmost layer. I find that to be very helpful. We're going to rename this frame that holds our logo, so that will keep it easy and tidy for us. And now let's go ahead and create the menu. So we have a couple of different menu items right here. We have home, meet the team, services, contact, and book a class today. And most likely I'm going to have to scroll back over because I have a tiny little memory. So I'm going to go ahead, click a text box, type in home. It automatically is using one of our larger fonts. So let's go ahead and come over here under our typography, look for these 4 little buttons that have our styles, and we will want to make sure that it is our paragraph text right here, because I don't believe that it is. Actually, it might be bolded. So we can go ahead and click. Mine is Windows B for bold, but yours might be on your screen Control B or Command B to bold it. You can also come over here and it should have it within this box right here under typography. If you click right here, it should then give you some options to potentially bold it in there. Maybe it doesn't. I don't see it in there. Well, try hopefully Windows B. Let me see if I can try on my other thing. Okay, it's Command B on a Mac. So there's a couple of different ways that we can build this out. So normally I would just copy and paste this, and let's just do it that way. We're going to copy and paste it, type in meet the team, and then I'm going to copy these two, bring them over. Then we have services and contact, and then we're going to come over to our cute little resources, and select our button right here, button primary, bring it up here, and then we want the text to say book a class today. So this way of doing things is completely fine because we could select all of the different layers and then distribute all of the spacing to get it the exact spacing we want. And then you could basically group all of the objects by doing Command G, and then it would group everything. But this is another instance where I want to show you what auto layout would look like. So if we were to then use auto layout by clicking Shift A, it would then wrap all of these items together, making it a lot easier for us to update these items, not only from like a spacing standpoint, but if you were to ever need to change these objects in here. So let's say that they're like, actually, I don't want this to say services. I want it to say work with us. So if I was to do it in this regular grouping right here, I would have to type in work with us. And as you can tell, the spacing is now totally messed up. I would then have to come in here, move this button over, move this. Then I would have to like rework it, distribute them out again. And so this would just take out that whole process. And then when we type in work with us, since it's in auto layout, it's going to automatically adjust the layout to keep the spacing even between every single object. So I feel like seeing it in this direction goes to show how big of a difference auto layout can make. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move forward with this auto layout circumstance just to show you, but you can totally group the objects together in that way. Now, I believe I have all of the menu items, as white. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change these objects to be that lighter color. So let's go ahead, grab this frame, and let's rename the frame. Can't forget that. Menu, you can name it menu or navigation, whatever floats your boat. And then we are going to move it down into our desktop frame. And let's hold Alt again and see how far away we are. So it looks like we're at 23. So now I just moved up a couple of spaces so that it will be at 20. So now let's view Command G without our grid, and things are looking good. Let's pop back on the grid. Now, this is another one of those circumstances where you could then wrap these in auto layout. So as I had talked about before, you can put all of these items in auto layout, and then you could then add an additional auto layout here. Another really cool feature for auto layout, especially when it comes to the menu that I really like, and just objects in general, is you can lay out the objects in a different way. So let's say the client comes back, they're like, actually, I want to lay these out in a vertical manner. You could then swap it to vertical and start adjusting the spacing like that to switch the orientation. You can also take it a step further and you can wrap these objects to where when you start moving the design, it will just automatically start wrapping them in a new line. So again, there could be a whole separate video for auto layout because it is such an in-depth feature, but I did want to mention that about the menu specifically, but that would work for even shapes if you needed to change them from horizontal to vertical. So again, we could then go and auto layout both of these objects together, but I'm going to just go ahead and group things together in this video. I feel like the grouping is a little bit more straightforward for just starting out so that you can get a hang of grouping objects, organizing your objects, keeping them together. So actually, now that we've grouped these together, I'm going to change this frame name to just our navigation menu. And then we can name this logo plus menu items, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now we have our menu good to go. Let's start building out some of the features down below. So I think it might be easiest to start with the text, at least this larger text, then maybe add in the dog, and then maybe some of this lower text right here. So let's go ahead and grab our copy. So as we're starting to add copy, make sure that you grab it from our page copy right here. Let's copy and paste this onto our page right here. Now, first and foremost, we clearly don't have this in the correct size. So let's go ahead and go to our typography styles. Click H1, and I am going to change the color first before separating these out into two different layers. Because normally you could just have this secondary text be on a second line, but we're going to have to do some special laying out of this to perfectly position the dog in between. So let's go ahead and remove the rest of the text from there. We're going to just set it just up against our grid for now. And as you can tell, we have professional going on the left-hand side, and then the dog training is lining up with our right-hand grid. So we can go ahead, and I actually am going to even break these out into two. Now you could technically just add some space in between here, try to position the dog, but I think that in the long run, it's just a little bit easier if you could break these out. And this could be another feature eventually that you could work with auto layout. Now, I will say this section is a little less straightforward than other sections when it comes to auto laying out. And so I would definitely practice with some more simple layouts like a menu, like buttons, maybe like a text field before trying to dive into a layout like this when it comes to that. So let's go ahead. We separated these out. Let's click in and line up both of these items to the right-hand side, or this row. I'm going to wait to group this text together because I'm going to have to move these around to position to where you can kind of see a little bit of both of these. And I might even drag out the dog a little bit more than this example image, but this is a really good start. So I think that we can go ahead and bring the cute little dog into this design. So let's copy and paste him over here. And let's just lay him out with the bottom of this. Now, he is missing part of his fur, so let's go ahead and hide this part of the fur right here. Now, as you can tell on the left-hand layers panel, this dog is not part of the frame, and we need it to be part of the frame so that it cuts off the bottom half of this image. So let's go ahead and drag him down. And as you can tell that now that it's part of the frame, that it automatically chops off the part of the image that we don't need. And this is what I will say too is a nice thing about using frames is it's easier to kind of group things within it. So let's kind of play around with his spacing. I want his head to overlap some of the top text as well as kind of mess with some of the bottom text here. I still want it to be very legible to where you can see that this is a G and then this is a T. So I actually think that is really good spacing for him. So I'm going to go ahead and group these two bottom text layers together. Windows G on my screen, yours should be Command G to group these together. I'm going to rename this dog training. And then now, because I like to group and group and group, as well as auto layout on auto layout, I am now going to combine both of these into a new group too. So let's type in H1. Well, I guess you don't really need headings. So let's do H1 for that. So let's scroll out. Things are looking good. And we might end up bringing this a little bit higher because of the text. So let me actually go ahead and do that preemptively. Let me adjust his size again to cut off that bottom. I'm going to click into the layer that we have, move that over a little bit now that we've enlarged his size. Okay, cool. I like that a lot better. So let's decrease this. And we can go ahead and just name this whole section right here, hero section. Now that we have, and I'm going to take away the frame for now so that it's a little bit easier to see when we're adding this shape to the background. So I think it will be easiest if we add the shape in next. So go ahead and copy this over. And if you wanted to automatically put it into the frame, you can go ahead and click within the frame and paste it in, and it should automatically put it within that frame. That being said, if for any reason it doesn't put it in the frame, you can always just drag the layer down to the frame. So we definitely want to adjust the size of this because we want it to kind of fill some of the space, the dead space over here on the left-hand side, because since we will have text over here, this will kind of balance out the white space we have over on this side. And I do want it to kind of come up over here as well. So I'm going to kind of space it right there. Now, as you can tell where I have it right now, it is overlapping the text layer that I have. So you will want to make sure that you drag it down below the text layer so that it is sitting behind the dog and behind the text layer. Perfect. And actually, while I'm over here, I do also want to move the logos up. And then I'm going to make sure, let me see if I can get it out of there. So now the H1, the header is all together and then that. So your layer should look something like that. And I'm really liking how this is looking. This is looking really, really clean. And now we have a lot of really great space to then add this secondary text right here. So let's go ahead and let's turn the grid back on, Control G, and let's copy in this header, this little subheading over here. Now I want to actually line this up with this second grid right here. And I'm going to make sure it's lined up. If you need to see if it's lined up properly, good thing I zoomed in. Make sure that you zoom in. There's a couple of different ways you can zoom in. You can hold down Z, and as you can tell, it'll pull in the magnifying glass, or on my computer, I hold Windows and the minus and plus buttons to do it as well. So whichever one is easiest for you, but I'm glad we definitely zoomed in so that we can line this up properly. Let's go ahead and change the fill color. Oh, sorry, not the fill color. Oh wait, I'm confusing myself. Yes, we are doing the fill color to this cream color because we want it to match right there. Now, since we already have a button up here, we can just pop this button out of this section, or you can come over here, whichever one is easier, and just copy this and paste it into here. Let me make sure I grabbed everything. I don't think I grabbed the full button. And then pop it over here. And I think I had it lined up on the left-hand side. No, I did the right-hand side. Okay, so let's change the text to book a class today. And move this over. And I like that with the grid, when you're moving it around, if you snap it to the grid, you'll see that red line pop up, which is really, really nice. And it makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and reorganize my layers because I'm just like that. I like to do that. Let's move these down to the bottom. Okay. Now let's take our grid off and look at how things are looking. I think it is looking really good. Let's maybe move these up just a hair. Okay, now let's compare it to the original design. So I think what we're wanting to do, and what I think is really nice when it comes to design, is it's nice if you can kind of have even space above the text and kind of below. So it definitely looks like we have all of this information way too low. So let's move it up a little bit. And we'll have to play around with the dog again. But I think that this will really help the design look a little bit more cohesive. Let's play with him. There we go. I like that spot right there. And then let's play around with this. Keep in mind when you're playing around with this, you don't want this background shape to bump into this text because it will start to feel very, very claustrophobic. So just keep that in mind when you're kind of adjusting the space of that you are very considerate of that. So let's move that up. Let's actually move this down a little bit. I'm just adjusting it. I'm just hand adjusting it a little bit more. Okay. Okay, that's really close. So as you can tell, I was kind of measuring it. It looks like there's like about 140 here. And then when you click on here, there's about 142 to the top. Now there's a couple of elements playing into here. Obviously we have a menu up here. Obviously the text has a little bit of spacing here compared to this text. So we'll kind of eyeball it for this section right here. But overall, I am really liking this design right here. So let me see. One thing I'm going to do as well is, since we grouped together this top section, I'm going to go ahead and group together this bottom section. And just type in hero section right here. That way we're just keeping things super organized. So when somebody comes into this layer right here, they will not only find the navigation menu, but then they will find all of the hero image text. So I am really excited with how that turned out. And I think that we are ready to go ahead and move on to this second section right here. So again, we're going to start out the section by bringing in a frame. Either click F or click onto the frame button right here. Let's just loosely drag it out. I am going to roughly make this section like about 332, but depending on how your elements work out, you might just have to adjust it, because I want to make sure that we keep the spacing not only on the outer edges of our website very consistent, but we also just want to make sure that the spacing on the tops of the section are really consistent throughout the rest of our website design, so that things look very, very cohesive, and it really makes the design look a lot more professional. So we have the frame. Let's go ahead and fill the frame with this light blue color. Let me see. I have the frame in the top section. So if something like that happens to you, you'll definitely want to make sure that you don't have the frame be in that top section right there. Let me try again. Let's do, I'm going to manually type this in. Let's do 332 to be safe. Let's try to fill that. Okay, perfect. She worked this time. Now let's come over here and let's start with the header, because that'll be the easiest one to kind of lay out, and then we can kind of work on the bullet points right there. So let's pop in our header right here. Let's make sure that she is aligned to the center, and you can even click on the position as center to help you out. And then what I think will be easiest is to start adding in some additional sections. So essentially adding in all of the different bullet points to then work on the spacing. So you can kind of do spacing a couple of different ways. You can always work your way across, group those together and drag it down, or you can kind of group them vertically and then copy and paste them over. And I think for this particular layout, I would prefer, and I normally would go across, but I think to keep the grid consistent, I'm going to work vertically so that everything's lining up on the left-hand side and then work my way over from there. So let's go ahead and grab this tiny, tiny little check mark. Let's copy her over and let's paste it into our website right here. Let's go ahead and drag it onto the right-hand side. And then we're going to want to copy and paste this whole text box over here. So let's copy it right here. Now I roughly, since we have, and this is really nice that it works out this way, we have 12 different columns. So it should work out perfectly to where each of these is taking up 3. So you basically can have it be the check mark and the text takes up 3. Then we have another one taking up 3, another one taking up 3, and then the last one taking up 3. So this is why we love grids. It makes our life so much easier. So let's go ahead and remove that additional messaging. We can get rid of the grid to see how things are looking layout wise when it comes to the icon with it. So for instance, if we want to put it closer together, you can totally do that. But I really like the distance these are from one another. So if you want to see the specific distance, let me zoom in for you. This is probably my favorite tool in Figma. Again, you can hold the Alt tool. Once you're on them, you can either click the icon and hold it so to see how far it is away from the text, or you can also do the same for the text and see how far away it is from the icon. So let's do the icon and see how far away it is. So it's 8. So you'll just want to make sure that as you're building out all of the other ones that it is the same. But what we will do is we are going to just go ahead and group these objects to ensure that they do stay together. So we'll just call this first bullet point. Or if you want to make it even easier when you go to edit, destructive behavior. Okay. Now, as you can tell, it is not linking this to the frame. So let's make sure that we drag this down into the frame that we are working on. Let's make sure it's in there. Perfect. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this down here. One thing, because we set the gutters and the gutters to 30, and we know that this text box and icon will be 30 away from the next set, we can also make sure that the spacing is consistent from this top column to this next one. So let's click on the top one and again, use my trusty little tool. And as you can tell, it is 23 away. So 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30. Count out loud, guys. So now we have it 30 away from there. Let's go ahead and switch that one out. So since we're working down, it will be a little bit annoying because then you'll have to come to this row right here. So if you want to break these out into 2 as well, you can do that as well to make it easier. But we're going to put in commands. And honestly, you can put these in any order that you want. But now we have both of those ready to go. So let's go ahead, again, group these so that they stay together. And we can rename this first column. And then now we can take these and start building out the other ones. So let's make sure that this lines up. Again, we can check. So if this was perfectly lined up, you would see that it's 30 across. So now we have very consistent spacing, not only between the different rows, but also the different columns as well. And we can even take it a step further and space this 30 if we want to get wild as well. Oh, I almost got it. It's 31. Oh my goodness. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm all about consistent sizing right here. So the next one that we have in line is this leash and potty trained. So this one's just a lot of rinsing and repeating, which is honestly nice sometimes in design. We're going to take the next row, paste that in, And we are just rinsing and repeating, my friends. Now, again, don't forget about your layers over here. We're going to go ahead and rename this one to second, and we're also going to reorder it. And then you can actually, if you want to save some time, take both of these and come over here and line that up too. Okay. And then let's just fill in the rest of these. I love having this text over here. Makes it so much easier. Okay, and then the last one. Okay, perfect. All right. Now, if you want to take it a step further, you can then group all of these different all of these different objects too. Really quick though, because I don't believe that we named our other ones. No, we didn't. Let's go ahead and take care of that. So let's do third. Our first one got out of order here. Second got out of order. It's crazy around here. Okay. Fourth column. But you can then take it a step further, because if I was using auto layout, I would then definitely add these into a new auto layout. So for the sake of that and kind of getting familiar and comfortable with that, let's go ahead and just group this layer so that we have all of these in another group. We can call this list. And then we can even group these two objects together if you want. But I want to see the spacing on this, because as we go to design the website, I will just want to make sure that the spacing of these sections remains really consistent throughout the rest of our sections. So let's look at it just from a visual standpoint. And I actually feel like that's pretty good spacing right there. And it's about 80. So we could just go ahead and choose 80. So we would just need to, sometimes it's easier to just manually put it in the side to get the exact ones that we want. So as you can tell, now we have 80 above all of this text and 80 below. So when you're doing design, it's really, really nice to make sure the whole entire left side of your website is lined up. Your whole entire right side is lined up. But you also want to keep in mind the spacing on the top to bottom, because you want that to feel really uniform as well. So it looks like we are done with this section. And let's go ahead and rename this. We work with all breeds. So as you can tell, just from these two sections alone, our layers panel is looking very, very organized, which will help us in the long run and will help any developers that we work with, designers that we work out, like they will be obsessed with you. So let's move on to the next section, how we can help right here. So let's go ahead and build out the background. And then I think what we'll do last is add in these paw prints. So we'll do background, header, and then we'll build out these different sections right here. So let's create a frame. You're going to get real used to doing this. And let's do this one. Let's start out with like 700 height for this one. Oh, I did the wrong one here. I changed the alignment. Let's do 700 here. Okay, perfect. And then this one is in that lightest cream shade. So let's go ahead and fill it with our cream shade right here. Hold on. We did it again, guys. We did it again. We opened up a layer. Silly, silly. Okay, so let's just click out of all of the other frames, build it again. Let's do 700 and then cream. Let's make sure it's working. Okay. Let's go ahead and fill this with the cream color. There we go. Let's make this 700 for this section because we can always adjust it later, similar to how we did the top section. And let's go ahead and start building this out. Let's go ahead and move these top sections up. Before we do, we will click into the frame and let's grab the header first and just pop it in here. So one thing that could be helpful since we have the header, again, triple check the alignment to make sure that it is center aligned, but we can go ahead and already preemptively line it up to the top. And oh my goodness, look how close she did. 79, baby. We love that. Okay, so I went ahead and I just lined it up with the top so that it is 80 because we want it to be the exact same as these ones. And then now let's start building out these different sections. So what I find is easiest is if you build one out the way that you want it, and then you basically can copy and duplicate them. In the future, you can do this with auto layout where you create one, put it into auto layout, and then add extra ones in for there. But we're going to just create one of these, and then we are going to duplicate it. So these will all be grouped into their own right here. So let's start with puppy training. So what I think will be easiest is if we start with the background, and then we can add all of these different things onto it. So let's go ahead and start with a frame. And this is another instance where I love the grids. So we are going to use 6 for one side, 6 for the other. Make sure things are so tidy and spaced properly. So let's grab not the rectangle tool, but the frame tool, and let's draw out a frame. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to drag a 6 out, and we can actually make this a little bit longer. We're going to definitely have to adjust the spacing of this later. So the length is not as big of a deal. Okay, let's do. Actually, I'm realizing that we did not make a color swatch for white. So this will be great. Let's make a white color swatch. Let's just make a rectangle so that it's not linked to any of the other ones. Let's drag this all the way to white, and then let's apply and add a new color style. So white, perfect. Now we can go back, select the frame, and click white. Now that we have this within the grid system, I'm going to remove the grids by clicking Control G so that I can just see how things are lining up as well. Another thing I wanted to check, and I wanted to see how far away these bullet points were from this section right here. So they are 30 away. So I might keep this consistent with this bottom one just to be safe. So let's see. Okay, 30. And I actually think that that looks really good to do it 30 to keep it very consistent. So let's go ahead and let's actually round out this background frame. So if you come over here under appearance, you will see this little rounded box right here that is the corner radius. Let's add 10 to it. And now you will see, and it's a little bit tricky, you'll see once we add a drop shadow specifically, and we can actually go ahead and add that so that you can see what I'm talking about. But if you come down here to effects and click the plus button, we're going to add a drop shadow effect. If you want to edit it, which I recommend, come over here to the effect settings. I'm going to go ahead and do 5 for the X, 5 for the Y. And then if you wanted it more blurry or less blurry, you could definitely affect that. But I like the 4 right here. And I'm going to just put the percentage or the opacity down to 10 so that it's a little bit visible, but not too crazy, because we just want to help people be able to see the difference between this white box and the background. Now, Let's build out the icon and then put the text by it. So let's go ahead, grab another rectangular box and drag it out so that it matches this box right here. Now, I'm thinking I'm going to want it to be about 20 on each of the sides. So let's see. Okay. So let's just take this height down 1. So now this box will have 20 on the top, on the left, and then on the bottom. And we can even have it be 20 between this and the text if we like it. Every once in a while, I will break the rules a little bit to add a little bit more white space between a box and text, but I do try to keep spacing as uniform as humanly possible. Let's go ahead and add another radius of 10 to that box. And this fill color should be blue. So let's go ahead and grab our light blue color. So let's go ahead. Oh, actually, I'm going to switch this to a frame. Let's go ahead and click Shift A. Let me see if it'll keep it. Okay, yeah. Click Shift A and we're going to switch that to a frame instead of a rectangle. You can also delete it and just grab a frame if you would like. Actually, maybe we'll do that to just teach you to build a frame. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's fill the frame with the light blue, add the border radius. Okay. Okay, checking all sides again. So now we have 2 frames. Let's go and grab the first icon that we have. So we have puppy training first. So go and look for this puppy icon. Let's bring it over right here and let's pop him in here. We'll definitely want to keep him as uniform as possible. So it could be nice to have him be as close as possible as well to that. Okay, perfect. I had to zoom in to triple check. It was a little too far away. And I clicked the positioning to make sure that this icon is sitting directly in the middle. Okay, I like the way that's looking. Let's see if it's looking really similar. Yes, we are killing it so far. Let's grab the text now. And the nice thing is we added this icon within this frame, so we don't have to group that together. We can call this the icon. Let's now grab this text right here, bring it over within this frame. We can move it up a little bit. Now, if we want to keep it really similar, you can do this 20 to keep all of the spacing the same, but I feel like 20, if you look at it, looks really close. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it as 30 for now to see how it feels. Sometimes I think it helps to have a little bit of extra space in order to be able to digest the information. Let's adjust this width so that it's 20. I'm all about keeping things uniform. Okay, this is 422 across, so let's go ahead and change the width to 422. So I will use the sizing on the right-hand side whenever I'm trying to get to a specific width or height. So it really is helpful to kind of toggle between the two, and you can use them both really, really seamlessly. Let's come over here, grab one of our buttons, and it actually is in the wrong color. So let's change it, bring it over here, and pop it into this section right here. Let's grab all of these items and kind of distribute them evenly to see how things are looking. And let's go ahead and change the text. So all of these buttons will say learn more on it. So let's go ahead and keep that. Now I have added in a little arrow right here. So definitely keep that. If you don't have the arrow for any reason, you just can use the arrow key on your keyboard. It's at the bottom above the space bar. But as you can tell, that is looking really nice now. And let's go ahead and group these items together. That way it makes it a little bit easier organization wise and when we go to edit the other ones. So let's rename this text. And then now let's rename this whole layer puppy training. So this will be nice to then copy and paste. So again, I like to move the header up. So we can actually name this whole entire frame how we can help. That way, if we ever need to click into this specific section, we can totally click into this section. Let's turn our grid back on and we are going to want to copy and paste this bad boy over here to the right-hand side. We are going to work left to right for this particular section. Make sure that it is lined up right here. And let's start adding in the additional information. So let's just start with the text because this icon is going to be a little bit trickier. As you can tell with this icon, it was a perfect square. Two of our icons are not a perfect square. So we're going to have to just line it up with one of the sides. So text went in perfectly, could not be happier. Let's chat about the icon right here. Okay. So we want to make sure that our icons line up the same. So definitely check the size of this first icon on your screen. Mine is 133 by 133. Highly recommend making a little note of that so that when you go to add the next one, you can line up. It'll be not the height, but the width with that. So we are looking for this little icon with the dog for this next section. You will want to make sure that when you go into this new frame, that not only are you within this frame, but you'll want to then click into this specific light blue frame too. So not just this puppy training frame, which we are going to go ahead and just relabel obedience training, but that you also click into the icon layer because we are going to replace this icon. So let's go ahead. We're keeping in mind, actually, it looks like, okay, yeah, 133 by 133. Let's keep that number in mind. We're going to delete this one and then make sure we're in the frame and paste in our new little dog. Now, this icon is not the exact, like an exact square. So we are going to want to adjust just the width and not the length. You will also want to make sure that you click this constrained portions because you don't want to affect the width and it not scale the height properly as well. So let's go ahead and try our 133 for the width, see how it looks out. Oh, I need to make sure that I select the icon. Also, this is a note for you if you just went to do it and it, it scaled separately. It scaled the ball separately. So make sure you're on the actual icon itself with the ball included. Why is it doing that? Let's go ahead and group them. Maybe that's why. Group the old icon. Yep, I think that's why. Okay, there we go. So we just changed that one side to 133 so that it remains consistent with this one, but because it's not an exact square, it's a rectangle, we're just going to affect the one side, but it will scale the height to work properly with the new width that we put in. You'll want to make sure that you use the positioning to make sure it is exactly in the middle. Obviously, for this particular one, we're going to have a little bit more height than we will on the sides, and that's completely okay. You can't have everything line up perfectly every time, but that's okay. So let's again check our layers right here. We're going to put puppy training above it. And I'm actually going to grab both of these layers, copy and paste them. Go ahead, since they're already selected here, drag them down on the layers panel before I then pull them down here. What's cool is we already know that our gutter from this puppy training to this obedience training is 30, like we had mentioned from the above. So we're going to again check that we keep that 30 consistent also between these elements. So we're at 27, so 28, 29, 30. Bam, we have the exact spacing between all of these elements. So now they will be extremely, extremely cohesive. So let's come over here, grab our in-home training. Now this is just, again, rinse and repeat. Let's grab the text. And it might be easiest too if you just go ahead and grab the text for both, pop them in so that you just do text at one time and then icons at one time. So let's grab the next icon, which is the little house. She is cute. We're going to copy her, come over here, delete this one, pop in the new one into the correct layer. I'm going to go ahead and change the positioning so I can just see what we're working with. Change this to 133. Oh, that was a perfect example of what happens if you don't have this constrained portions clicked. So let me do it again, actually, so you can see. It did change the width, but then it stretched the height in such a weird way. So you'll want to make sure that that is selected for this particular website and with what we are doing. So we have that selected. Let's do the 133 again. Well, bam, it's looking way better. We'll triple check that it's right in the middle of that and it is looking good to go. Oh my goodness. I did it to the wrong one. Oh my goodness. We have all been there. So let's do a little Command Z. Let me see. Command Z until we have the puppy one back. We've all been there, guys. So let's go ahead and do it again. Get a little practice. Put her in here. Constrain the portions. 133. And then we will position her within that frame. It's looking really good. And let's do the last one now. So the last one left is this private training one. So let's come over here, grab it. Let's just go ahead, paste it into here. Okay. Perfect. So now we have everything very, very uniform. Everything is super organized too. So when I'm done working in a section as well, I like to just go through and just condense everything because that can get a little outrageous too when you're working and all of your layers are open. It gets a little crazy. So that's another thing that I like to do is I like to just start slowly clicking out. So before we end this section, let's revisit the spacing. Because again, we had 80 above, but look below. If we click onto here, we have 68. So we will want to make sure that we have 80 and it looks like we have it now. Yes, perfect. So now we have 80 above, 80 below. So that'll just keep everything very, very uniform and that section is good to go. Let's dive straight into the next one. This one's going to be a little bit more straightforward because you're not having to copy things across. And let's go ahead and build out a frame. So let's grab the frame. Let's make sure that it's not popping it into one of the other layers like it's been doing. And then let's do this one. Let's start with 720 for now. Let's fill this bad boy with the green color and just make sure that it is lined up with that top section right there. Let's put the grid back on. And what I am going to do is I'm going to have the image line up with these 6 different columns. And again, you technically can have the copy line up with the other 6 columns too. But sometimes visually, I think that it looks a little congested. So sometimes I will ignore that for some circumstances and I will have it take up more so like 5 of the columns instead. So let's grab our image right here. Let's paste her in here and let's make sure that it is across 6 of the columns. Now we will want this a little bit longer. So let's go ahead and drag it longer and we'll check that it's again 80 because you basically for this text doesn't have to line up 80. It's whatever is kind of like the topmost element that you will want to line up right there. So we have it already lined up with the top. Let's go ahead and have it line up with the bottom too so that we don't even have to worry about it later. Okay, perfect. It's 80 and 80 on the top and bottom. Oh, looks like I don't have it 40. So let's fix that too while we're on here. Okay. Let's chat really quick about this image because obviously it's like cutting off in a weird way. So I find that the easiest way to correct this is to go to the fill, click the image, and then you will want to click on instead of it being fill, let's do crop instead, because then we can either, if we wanted to make the image larger like that, we could, but obviously we're trying to fit all of these dogs in here. So we want to position it in a way that we can kind of fit all of them within that frame. And whenever you're done finding the exact orientation that you like, you just have to click out of it and then click out of that. So now we have the image set up exactly within the box how we want it. And we can go ahead and dive into the content right here on the right-hand side. Oh my goodness, you know what I'm realizing? We didn't bring in the paw prints. So let's go back and let's grab the paw prints. So as you can tell, we have a cute little subtle accent of the paw prints going up and then the paw prints going down. So we're going to backtrack, ladies and gents, and whoever. We are going to grab this and come over here and let's pop this into this frame right here. Let's drag it to the back because we want it to go behind all of these different items. Oops, when I did that, I got rid of it out of that layer. So you can zoom out, see how it's looking. I want it to overlap a good amount. So like just a hair like there. And then let's copy and paste it, bring it over here. And if you hold shift on your keyboard and move it to the right, you can tell that it's rotating. And it's really nice because you'll just want to make sure that you completely rotate it around so that the paw prints are now going the opposite way. And you will want it to just lay out in a very similar manner. So let's rename this to bottom right paw prints. Oh. And then top left. And then let's just drag all of these layers on top so that they are not overlapping. Okay, we got the paw prints in. Let's head back to the about section. Let's go ahead and rename this frame About Us. Again, we're going to come over here and grab all of the content. Let's hop back on our grid with Control G. Pop the text in here, and we're going to go ahead and line the text up with the right-hand side right here. Perfect. Let's triple check all of these font colors too, and let's make sure that it is dark gray on this section. And you can also do the same for all of these. We can check that we have dark gray. And this is why these layer styles are so nice, because it makes it so easy if you're like, oh, actually I need to change that color, to go in and adjust things later. All right. So like I said earlier, you could totally have all of this text line up with the 6 grids like this. But let me get rid of the grid right here and just look how there's just not a lot of breathing room, a lot of white space. So I definitely think that there are certain circumstances where it is totally fine to disregard the columns just like a little bit to make it a little bit easier for your users to digest the content, especially because we do have a good amount of content here. So we will want them to be able to read the text really easily. So we're going to go ahead and have it just line up with the end of that column. So it just gives us a little bit more breathing room, but not too crazy. So we have the text there, and you can just go ahead and grab our secondary button. This is the first time we're using the secondary button. And you can go ahead, let's grab it again. And pop it in here. Now, I believe the wording should be the same. So if you wanted to just grab it from another button, you totally can. So let's just copy and paste it over to this one, and it will automatically put it within the styles that we have, which is really, really nice. I'm going to go ahead and grab the text though. So grab into the text layer. If you happen to get onto the button, you can press the enter button and it will basically nest you down to the text. So that's another like little fun shortcut. And we're going to go ahead and click Command U to get rid of that underline, because I don't like it for that particular button. Now, we do have a little bit of space on these buttons, so I'm going to actually go back a little bit and add some spacing on the sides of all of my buttons. So I think it would be nice maybe to do, we're also going to get rid of the underline on this particular button. Okay, let's do the 20. I like that one a lot better with 20 on the side. So let's go ahead and we're actually just going to copy and paste this button over to this section right here since we already got the spacing perfect. Let's make sure that this goes in the correct section. So we're going to have it be under here. Love that. Okay. And then we'll just copy and paste that one down here and just go ahead and change the style of it. We'll do the royal blue and the cream color. So now all of the buttons are very, very universal. Let's have this one be in our about section as well. Make sure it went there. Let's go ahead and move the image as the top layer. About us. Perfect. I'm going to check the spacing to see how things are distributed here. Oh, I actually don't like that. So I'm going to see. Okay. I might move this button up a little bit. Let's look at how the spacing looks. Okay, yeah. I like that spacing a lot. So let's go ahead and group these items. I'm going to then click the vertical position to make sure that it snaps to the center of this frame. That way it is aligned properly. And let's check it against that. And that section should be good to go. That one was probably the easiest section out of all of them. We love that. And let's make sure that everything is organized. So let's name it text. So we have the image, we have the text. As you can tell, things got a little out of order again because this section was the newest one that we built. So now we have everything in order as well. Also, this is driving me crazy that this is named Desktop 1. So let's go ahead and rename it. All right, now let's work on the reviews section right here. So we actually have the reviews and the blog within the same section. So we can go ahead and make a really, really large frame for the next section. So let's grab our frame. Let's do this one as like 1450 now. And then again, we'll adjust it as needed. Okay, we're going to make this one 1450 because we can always adjust it as needs be. Oh my goodness, I typed that in. Too crazy. Perfect, 1450. That'll be a good start. So what we're going to do in this frame is we will have two different groups. We're going to group all of the testimonial stuff together, and then we are going to group all of the blog stuff together. So let's start with the header, the subheading, the arrows, and then we will work on the information below it. So let's go ahead and grab these two headers, put it in here, center align both of these items. Perfect. Let's align both of them. Let's check to make sure that they're going to be 80 spaces by holding Alt again. That's a perfect position. Let's go ahead and group these two items together. Name it section header. And then let's go ahead and tackle the arrows within this section. They basically are lined up perfectly within the middle of these headers. So it'll be really nice that we already have these grouped together because it will make it a lot easier for us to grab them and then adjust them as needed. All right, so let's go ahead and grab this arrow. Let's bring it into this section right here. Turn our grids back on with Control G. Zoom in. And let's add our arrow right there. Now, I think I might want to just have this be 50 or maybe even less. Let's try 40. Let's back away. That might be too small, actually. Okay, let's go ahead and do happy medium. Let's do 45. Let's place this first arrow, see how it looks, and then that's when we can kind of copy it to the other side. So let's scroll out, get rid of it. Okay, I like that a lot. So let's do right arrow. Oh, I labeled the wrong thing. This section is the reviews are in. Let's turn back on our grids and we are going to copy and paste. Before we move it all the way over, let's hold shift down, rotate it all the way around, basically 180, and then grab it again. And if you hold shift, it will hold the same position the whole way across. Because look, if we let go, it gets a little wild. So if you hold shift, it'll make sure that it lines up perfectly with your other arrow. So that's a fun little trick that you need to make sure that you do. Then once you have it on the other side, which we can zoom in to make sure that we have it lined up with the grid layout that we have. Before we then grab these two arrows, group them together, rename them. And then we can grab both our arrows layer and our header layer and then make sure that it is positioned perfectly in the center. Again, you'll just want to make sure that you check the top to make sure it is still lined up 80 down from there, just because sometimes when you align layers, it might adjust one of those layers and then mess up with some of the settings that you already had. So we have that top section ready to go. We're now going to build out these 3 testimonials or these reviews. And again, this will be similar to this how we can help section where we start with 1 testimonial and then we can duplicate the others and input all of the other information. So let's start with the frame. With these 3 items, since we have 12 columns, we're going to divide that by 3, and each one of these is going to take up 4 columns. So let's go ahead and create our first frame right here, and you will want to drag it into more of like a rectangular shape going across 4 columns. So that looks like a good shape for now. Let's fill it with our newest white color. And you can double check that is spanning across all of the columns. Again, one thing that we can go ahead and check right here is the spacing that we have from these elements up to here. So again, remember we used 30 up here. So we can just keep that spacing consistent between here and here. So we'll have to half that size. And it might even look, in my eyes, it looks a little bit closer, but no, actually it looks pretty accurate. So I think that that will be good. Now let's start with, let's do text first to save some room for the image. So go ahead and copy over Sarah's testimonial within this frame. And I think it's easiest to line it up with the frame make sure it's middle aligned, and then holding Alt, if you drag in, that will help you see the distance from the side. So this just depends on if you want to keep it consistent with some of the layers up here, which actually would probably be nice. If you remember, we were using 20 for all of these. So I think it would be really nice if we just left that really consistent with the size of this to 20. So scroll it in, holding Alt as you go in to 20 on both of these sides. And then we can come down here and we can kind of adjust that once we actually have the image within here. So let's go ahead and grab Sarah, bring Sarah over here, and we will pop her in this frame. We are basically going to turn this into a circle. You could definitely do this through rounded corners, but I actually like doing it a different way. So let's go ahead by dragging this down a little bit smaller. What I think would be nice is if we could immediately turn it into some sort of rectangle. So get it a little bit smaller, like about this size. And then let's make sure that we are going to have the same width as we do height. So let me see. We might want to, let's do unconstrained because this is one of those circumstances that we want it to change. Okay, 110. So now we have a perfect square. So again, you could just put the corner radius really stinking high by like dragging it over or like typing 100 or something like that. But what I think is a little bit easier is if you hover over this image, you will see that they actually have the corner radius built in. So instead of guessing at what it is, you can actually grab it and pull it all the way in to where all 4 of those circles join together, making your perfect circle. So we need to kind of see what we want sizing wise for this, because right now I feel like it's a little bit too big. We don't want her to overpower our testimonial. So I think that's a good size. I sized mine 88 by 88. You can tell right here in the layout. So let's stick with that. Let's turn our grids back on. Let's bring this up to where it goes 20. And then we'll have 20. So as you can tell now, all of our spacing is perfectly in sync. So we have her image, we have our testimonial, and then we have the frame. So let's go ahead and rename this Sarah's testimonial. You can go ahead and turn your grid back on, copy and paste this, and move this over to the next one so that we can then grab our next testimonial right here from Jason. We will grab his image as well. Bring it over here. And you could actually keep hers over there for now as like a nice little guide to help you resize this down. And again, hers is 88 by 88. So let's unconstrain these. Change his from 88 to 88. And then again, we will move his over. And then you can come over to the layers panel because you can just put his right on top of hers and just delete hers from the layers panel so that it lines up perfectly. That looks good right there. Let's rename it Jason's image. Okay, perfect. All right. And let's go ahead, drag Sarah's up. Let's copy Jason's over. Go ahead and put his at the bottom because we're going to change this one into our last testimonial. Grab Rochelle's testimonial. Pop hers in. And then grab Rochelle's image. And again, repeat exactly what we did with Jason. Beautiful testimonials. Let's take the grid off. And it is looking good. Love it. Okay, cool. So, like I had mentioned, since we have 2 different sections, we have the reviews and then we have the blog, I would recommend taking all of the items, and we'll go ahead and we'll reorder this again. So we'll do the header first, then the arrows. Let's grab all of these items within the reviews and let's go ahead and group these together again. So Command G. rename this to the reviews are in. And then now we can start building out the on the blog. So again, we're going to want to make sure that the spacing is the same from here to here to the on the blog section. So let's grab on the blog, pop it over here, make sure it's center aligned, and let's see what the spacing is. So 80 from there, and it looks like we're only working with 70. So we need to go a couple more. And you can actually hold Alt while you're going down. Like, as you can tell, you can hold Alt this whole entire time so that you can just like go down, seriously space it down one at a time if you would like. So now we're going to start grabbing these images. And again, we're going to do it the same exact way where we're doing the same grid for this one. So let's grab the cute little dog's image. We're going to pop it in here. And you can actually take it and have it be like that. These are going to be a square. So we could just make it a uniform square if you would like. Or you can also eyeball it too and pull it up to like whatever square proportions you want. But if you want to keep it cohesive, we can do 430 by 430. We're going to then check the spacing between this and here to keep it at 30, like all of the other sections. We're going to build out this whole entire blog article section. So we need to grab the subheading for this blog article, the paragraph text, and then the call to action for this one before we can then copy and do the others. So let's pull in this article. Let's see what the spacing is between these. That's 10. This is another one of those times that I might actually have a little bit extra. Let's triple check that these are all middle aligned as well. And this is another one of those instances I typically like for my header to span all the way across. But just for this particular design, I am going to drop down one of the words because I hate widows. So I'm going to just drop it down. But I will say for responsive design, if this blog section is going to be a template, for instance, on different platforms like Showit, like Wix Studio, they have templated pages where you basically set up a layout like this and it just auto pulls in. For an instance like that, when responsive features are needed, you will have to make sure that it lines up. But just for this design, I'm having it be like that for now. So I'm going to do 20 between the image and here. What do I have right here? Okay. I like that. Let's make sure everything's lining up. And let's go ahead and grab one of these buttons from above. Let's check what the wording is. Read the full article. So let's grab this. Let's have this be 15 too, because there's 15 from here to here. And so we'll do 15 from here to here. Let's change the wording to read the full article. Let's make sure that this is middle aligned. Line it up with everything. We'll triple check again. And then let's go ahead and group this object. And then since this article is going to line up with all of the other ones, we can also go ahead and check the bottom spacing to make sure that's 80 as well. So we have this whole section, this whole blog article, sorry, not section, ready to go. Let's rename it article number 1. Let's move the reviews back up. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this next article, rename it to article number 2, move it over, and let's start copying and pasting the text. And for this one, since I have a little bit more text to work with, I did move it out a little bit, just so you know. Text that one in. Perfect. And now we can grab our second article image. So again, this one is 430 by 430. So let's just grab that, place it perfectly in here. And then you can delete the one that was underneath. We can make sure that everything is lined up again. And again, if you want to crop these, you can come in here and adjust the way that these are sitting within this section as well, with under the fill, under images, crop, and we can kind of like adjust him to sit more in the middle. Okay, so that one's good to go. And let's add our last article. Okay, perfect. Rename it. Article number 3. And let's go ahead and grab. Again, that one has another little widow, so we're going to just move it over. Grab this. And then the last image we have for our blog is this one right here. So let's go ahead and pop that in. So let's do the 430 by 430 again. Okay, cool. And let's get rid of that one. We can make sure that everything within this one is lining up properly. And then let's check if we want this one cropped too. Actually, we do. We want to bring him more in the middle of the frame. Okay, so let's get rid of our grids and check it out. I love it. It's looking really good. So we are getting there. We are almost at the finish line, guys. You are crushing it. So we have 2 more sections to build out. So let's go ahead and preemptively make this section a little bit longer, because we can always take away. So let's turn our grids back on. Let's go ahead and grab this first image, bring it over here. And I think that this would be nice again to just be an even box. So let's do 390 by 390 for now. And what I think would be easiest is if we go ahead and bring in all 4 of these, size them appropriately, and then we can stretch them all at the same time. Well, not stretch them, but make sure that they're lining up properly. So let's do 390 by 390. Okay, we've got 2 in there. That one's looking a little funky. Let's size it on the top. Oh yeah, it was off. I was wondering why I wasn't lining up. Okay, 390 by 390 on both of those. Let's switch the order of these. $390, $390. Let's check these ones, $390, and you got to make sure that these are all unconstrained. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab all of these. We'll need to make sure also, it looks like they're not within the desktop. Okay. Okay, we're going to grab all of these. We are going to make sure that they are distributed evenly and that they are lined up properly. And then we are going to I put them back onto a constraint so that they would move properly. And we're going to line them up with the edges of the website so that we have 4 across perfectly. This little one's giving us a little trouble here. Okay, let's do 350 by 350. So we might need to let's try grouping them. Oh, that's why they're not all on the desktop. Okay. Let's triple check. Let's group them. And now let's try that. Perfect. Okay, cool. And now we can rename this Instagram feed or gallery if you want this to just be a gallery. We also need to move this section down below. Let's rename this Reviews plus Blog. And then let's build out our footer. Easy peasy. Let's grab a frame. We are going to fill it with our blue color. Let's just start at 450 for the height for now. And go ahead and start with the contact information over here. So copy and paste this in here. And we are going to line this up with the left side of the grid. Let's go ahead. These are really long, so grab the text and double click on the right-hand side to snap it to it. Grab both text, and we're going to change the color. So we need to change the fill color to cream. We're going to have to add these footer icons, and I have them evenly placed right here. So before we actually paste them in, I kind of want to group the text together first to just keep that organized before I then add in the icons. And so now you can paste them in under. And let's change the selection colors to be our greenish yellow. Now, I do want to change the sizing of these a little bit. So I have added each into a frame. Make each of these items, let's try 30. And let's do let's constrain this one. Do 30 for that one. Yeah, I like that. And then let's constrain this one. Do 30 for the long side. That way the length is lining up for Facebook. And then the width is lining up for this particular one. Okay. And then let's make sure that this middle one has 10 on each side so that it lines up a lot better. Okay. So let's distribute these evenly and let's group the social icons together. Social icons. And then if we scroll out and like the way they're sitting, which I might put them a little bit lower, we can then group our contacts section together from the footer. And again, we'll want to make sure that this, okay, perfect. In the footer too, I like to line up all of my items from the height. So you'll notice in the footer, I have it lined up with the height and not within middle, just so that it looks a little bit more cohesive. So we're going to go ahead and grab the logo from the top because we've already colored it up there. So you might as well just grab that, bring it down to the footer, turn the grids back on, and make sure that it's going to line up with these items. we'll center align it. And I actually want 2 grid spaces here. Column spaces. Perfect. Make sure that's center. We then also have a call to action button. So you might as well just grab the one from our hero. And pop it down here. Let's see how that's looking. Cool, I like it. So let's group these together. And we will name this one logo plus call to action. Also, while we are in here, we can call this frame our footer frame. And we can drag it to the bottom. Last step that we have is for our hours. Let's change this. Grab that, pop it into our frame. You'll want to make sure that all of these line up. Perfect. Bring it over again. We're going to snap that to it. And then we will have this side line up with the right-hand side. Oops, I did it one too many. We are going to change the color to cream and then group these together into hours. And then again, we will want to figure out what is the longest section and then adjust this to be 80. So now that we have all of these sections built out, what we can do is we can grab on our desktop frame and drag this up to meet the bottom. And we honestly should be good to go. So what we can do is you can either view your design by snapping off the grids and looking at it, but you can also come up here next to this play button and click preview, and it will load your design into a nice little preview that you could then scroll the site and see how things are looking. Congratulations on designing your very first website in Figma. Yay! If you are feeling a lot more comfortable and excited about Figma after following along with this tutorial, then definitely let us know in the comments. And I also encourage you to check out some of our other Figma tutorials so you can start practicing some of the more advanced features in Figma. All right, bye!